Hi everyone, it's October and Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I wanted to make a video about how I have found the garden really helpful for me through my breast cancer journey, and I wanted to share that with you today in case it is helpful for yourself if you're going through breast cancer, or if you're coming out the other side of breast cancer treatment, or if somebody that you know is going through breast cancer treatment. I really hope that this video will be helpful. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer in October 2024, so a year ago this month, and the past year has been a journey. The garden has really helped. I found a lump myself. I was in the shower and I found a lump, so I went to the GP who referred me to my local breast cancer clinic, and they did a mammogram and very swiftly moved me from the mammogram room into the ultrasound room to get a closer look. And when they were doing the ultrasound, they decided that they wanted to take a biopsy there and then, which they did. And then I went back into the room to talk to the doctors, and they brought in a breast cancer nurse. And I knew at that moment, when they brought in the breast cancer nurse with the doctor, that they were going to tell me that I had breast cancer. I wasn't actually told on that appointment. They said it was likely to be breast cancer, but we had to wait for the biopsy results, and that was a 10-day wait. And for anybody who has been through any kind of cancer scare or the cancer journey itself, that 10-day wait is incredibly anxious. And I actually found myself in the garden every day doing a lot of very physical jobs. So it's the end of the summer and I was pulling out all of my beds and stripping everything, pulling everything out, digging everything up, and that kind of physical job was really useful to get out some of that anxious energy that I had. Then by the time I got the news that it was breast cancer, I kind of felt like I'd worked through a lot of those emotions already. I was quite lucky that the lump was very small. It was only 13 millimetres. And at that time, they didn't think it was in my lymph nodes. So I was scheduled in for surgery in December, which I had. So I had a lumpectomy in December, and they removed 4 lymph nodes. And at that time, they realised that it was also in one of my lymph nodes. Fortunately, the surgery was a success, and I had what they call clear margins, which means that they checked the cells surrounding the tumour for any more cancer tissue, and there wasn't anything there. So they decided at that point that I was technically cancer-free. After the surgery, you are encouraged to do some light exercise, but not lift your arm above 90 degrees. And in the winter, when there's a lot of really physical jobs to be done, that was really hard for me. I had to kind of really rein myself in from doing anything too physical. However, it's really good to keep mobile. It helps your healing process if you've got good blood flow. So being out in the garden, walking in the garden, I was doing some light weeding, I was doing a little bit of pruning. All of those things could be done post-surgery without too much effort. There was an anxious wait in January to find out whether or not I was going to need chemotherapy, and I was very fortunate that chemotherapy wasn't going to be beneficial to me and I didn't need to have it. Being a gardener, it can be challenging having chemotherapy because you have to make sure that you don't have any exposure to anything that's going to give you an infection. So any cuts or abrasions to the skin could cause you an infection. Also, anything that you disturb that's airborne potentially could cause an infection as well. So I probably would have had to have been a lot more cautious in the garden if I was having chemotherapy. However, going out and being in the garden and having that physical time walking through it, being surrounded by nature, that no matter what is always going to be beneficial. It's incredibly healing just being outside and seeing the seasons change and seeing nature doing its thing. So for me, the next step was radiotherapy, and I had 5 rounds of radiotherapy. It was quite an intense 5 rounds, and at first that wasn't an issue, and then eventually I started to have some physical side effects from the radiotherapy. There was a small amount of burning, but mainly it was to do with my muscles in my shoulder, my arm and my rib cage becoming very, very tight and sort of very bruised feeling. So the garden really helped with that, because of exercise and stretching and keeping moving was the most important thing to assist with that. So I was doing lots of planting out, and I was doing lots of cutting flowers and all the sorts of jobs that you would want to be doing in the garden in the springtime, and that was really, really helping getting my shoulder moving. So unfortunately I have a side effect from the radiotherapy. I have now got a chronic condition called lymphedema, which is where you have swelling and retention of water fluids around your skin, and you have to avoid getting any cuts or abrasions, burns to your skin, because it can cause serious infection. And this is something that I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life. However, moving the body, keeping yourself active is really, really beneficial for lymphedema. And so I find doing any jobs within the garden is really, really helpful. Because I was already a gardener, I was already doing physical jobs. Continuing to do that is encouraged by my lymphedema team. If I was new to gardening, you would have to do it under the advice of your lymphedema team and your oncologist. However, if you're already doing a physical job of gardening, then this is not going to be an issue. So I think what I didn't really appreciate for anybody that's been through cancer, breast cancer, is that once you've had surgery and chemotherapy or radiotherapy or both, there would be continuation of treatment right the way through the next decade. And I have an estrogen receptive cancer, that's what I had. And so the team decided that I needed to have suppressants of estrogen. So I have to take a medication for the next 5 to 10 years, which has a whole host of side effects. I also have injections which induce the menopause. So I had to go from being a very healthy early 40s woman to being in the menopause overnight. I can't have HRT or any of those drugs that can kind of help ease you into the menopause. I wasn't able to have that because it would trigger my cancer to return. So I have had to go through the menopause from 0 to 100 without any support package that the NHS could potentially offer somebody that didn't have a hormone-based breast cancer like mine. I also have a bone infusion. This is because there's research to say that if you have this particular bone infusion, then it will mean that if you get a recurrence of breast cancer, it is less likely to return into your bones. And this is something that I hadn't really appreciated, that if your breast cancer reoccurs, it could come back in another part of your body. This is called secondary cancer, and you could come back in your lungs, your liver, or your bones. And so having the option of the bone infusions means that that's one less risk for me. So that means that every 6 months I have to go to the hospital and I have an IV drip put into my arm and I have the infusion happen. This gives you kind of flu-like symptoms. So having the garden as being somewhere that I can kind of just get out and have some gentle exercise and fresh air when you're feeling kind of groggy has been really, really helpful. So for my whole life, I was always really healthy and I was a fit, active person, and I was never on any kind of medication at all. And so now I'm on a large cocktail of different drugs for a decade. I have found the garden really helpful to manage the side effects. And the drugs can have a huge range of different side effects, from things like hot flushes to brain fog, but they can also cause joint pain, nausea, headaches. And I have been quite lucky that my side effects haven't been too bad, but I did find that joint pain was one of them. And I found that keeping physically fit and active really helps. And losing a bit of weight has been really useful. So having time out in the garden doing some real physical jobs has really helped me to improve my weight. I'm also eating so much more from the garden. I think I have really kind of come to realise how important decent nutrition is. I've always eaten well, but I've never really understood how important it is for our bodies. So eating the organically produced fruits and vegetables from the garden has been really important to me this year. So the garden has really given me a sense of calm, a sense of solace and joy. And I don't think my cancer journey would have been as bearable if it hadn't have been from the garden giving me all of the things that I needed to take from it. So thank you so much for spending some time with me and listening to my story. And if you or somebody that you know is going through breast cancer treatment, then I really do recommend spending some time in your garden, or if you don't have a garden, just getting out into your local park and getting out into nature. Volunteering to help at a local community garden can be a really great way when you're feeling quite isolated during cancer treatment. I would just recommend being outside as much as you possibly can, because it has so many healing benefits. So thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.